Morning guys, so today we're looking at a route from Watnall Test Centre and we're going to kick off with two things. One is driver fault for vehicle checks. So if you get your tell me question wrong at the start of the test, it goes down as a driver fault. Don't stress about it, but of course if you can get these right, it does make the test start off a little bit more confidently. The other point is we're not actually outside Watnall Test Centre here, we're a little way down the road because the lay-by outside Watnall Test Centre was closed on this day. So we're just using this small section of road which would be the end of this test route as the start point, but it'll work out roughly the same anyway. Turning right up here, we have some warnings for some speed ramps. So anytime you're turning into roads like this, just want to watch out for those warning signs. We also had a weight restriction. We don't need to worry too much about that. And whenever you're dealing with speed ramps like this, we don't want to be doing more than about 15 miles an hour as an ideal. Now, some cars you'll have to hit that slower and others you can get away with a little bit more. But of course, the aim is to make it comfortable and smooth on the car, so you're not going to damage your tracking or suspension or tyres. And so the examiner, when you're on test, is really relaxed and comfortable on that drive because your passengers matter when you pass your test too. So keep that examiner nice and comfortable. Now, in a moment, we're coming up to the end of the road where we're going to be turning left. When we take this left turn, there's two faults that I record, one for mirrors signalling and the other is for left turns. So the first point is always look in your mirrors before you change direction. Now, if you miss your mirror checks, it will go down as a driver fault. The second one, turning left, if you notice the position here, the pupil almost goes straight up to the end of the road before turning in. This creates a lot of demand on the steering as she pulls out. So we want to get tucked into that left-hand position, firstly to give us a better control over the car. It's the most ideal line to take. And secondly, it closes off the gap for any bikes to sneak up the left side of you. We're going to pull up on the left just up here, so the pupil's picked a nice safe place. There's a nice high curb all along. It's not causing any issue with driveways or such. It allows cars to pass and it's far enough away from any junctions. As we move away, just a reminder, always check that right shoulder just before you pull away. A proper over the right shoulder, not a quick glance. Now, roundabout, we're going to turn left, first exit. So we're looking up into the road, mirrors and signal of course on approach, and then as we enter the road, it's always worth checking if anyone's following you too. Got a few parked cars up ahead, so you notice the pupil keeps the speed quite low here. Wherever there's more to do, just travel slower and it gives you more thinking time and more time to look at the mirrors and assess what's going on around you. And at the end of the road, we are going to take a right turn. It's a give way, so again, we just make sure it's safe before pulling across that line into the new road. And plenty of checks. The most common reason people fail the test has consistently been observations at junctions, so pulling out of a road like that without looking effectively. We've got a lorry here causing cars to come round it onto our side. The pupil deals with this beautifully, a little adjustment in speed, and then once she's got a clear gap, away we go. And of course we've got some road work, so again lots of mirror use, really important to check before moving out around the van and of course before coming back in again. And then again, just looking well ahead down that road, looking for anything that might change our path, our speed, and being prepared for that. So anything that's going on, like the van on the right here pushing the oncoming cars out slightly, that could affect your speed because you need to give them more space potentially. Up ahead we've got the pedestrian crossing, nobody using it, so we can reasonably say it's going to stay green. And then we've got some bends coming up as well. So these bends, we're actually turning right as we come around the first bend, and you'll notice a filter lane in the middle. The idea of these is that you can move fully into that centre area and not obstruct the traffic behind you that wants to carry on straight. And this is where the pupil makes her first serious fault, unfortunately, and she really does cut the corner properly here. Now, there is a good view into the road, but this is just completely unnecessary. And as we've come forward as well, I've had to remind the pupil we drive on the left. Sometimes we just have blank moments where our brain can just completely shut off and we don't know why we do these things. Pupil didn't have an explanation. I don't have an explanation. So it's just one of those things where, call it a brain fart. You know, your brain's just went absent. and you've done something stupid, and it's so easily done on your test. So when you're preparing for that, you want to be confident that you're doing everything as good as you can. You want to be very, very switched on throughout your test. Don't let your mind wander. Up ahead, we've got a parked car on the left and the van on the right, and the pupil negotiates her way through it really, really well. There was really good mirror checks. I've asked the pupil then to pull up on the left behind the next car. So this is known as an angle start, and you will do one of these on your test. You'll pull up behind a car about a car length away and then be asked to drive on again. And one of the things I advise you to do here is just double check your right shoulder as you start pulling out. So you do your checks, you start moving, and then as you steer out, you check again. Always be aware of oncoming cars as well, because if you pull out into the path of an oncoming car, you can guarantee that that will be a fail on your test, particularly if the examiner has to intervene to stop you from causing a collision. When the pupil pulls out of here, absolutely no issues with how she did it. Plenty of mirror checks. The shoulder checks were really good, and there was no oncoming cars. A nice clear path ahead. Also be aware of the Beetle on the other side, that green convertible car. Of course, any oncoming cars could be going around that, so that makes them sit out wider, meaning you've got less room. Up ahead, again, we've got a few parked cars, we've got the junction on the right, so it's just keeping your eyes moving, checking the mirrors regularly, and when it's safe, bring the car back to the left-hand side of the road. Up ahead, again, junction on the right, cars on the left. We don't want to move out too early, so we're causing a problem if someone comes out of that junction. The pupil is a little bit quick around here, but again, it's not to the point I think that it's worth a fault. And of course, coming round here, she's tucked in round the bend, so she's well out the way of any oncoming cars. Now up ahead, we're going to turn left at the end of the road. Again, I've put another fault for junctions turning left. It's much the same as the last time. You'll notice the car doesn't actually lean into the corner, and as we go out into the road, there's a lot of steering to correct that position. Note the warning for the traffic lights ahead, the bus ahead braking as it comes around the bend, and then the warning for queues likely. Now keep an eye on the bus and you'll see him stopping at the traffic lights. This is a nice clue as to what could happen. So if that was a queue of cars, you wouldn't see it over the wall. Watch those warnings. If you see a warning sign for queues, just come off the power, give yourself some time to respond to whatever's around that corner. Those warning signs aren't put there for no reason. Of course, as we move away, a quick mirror check just to see if anyone's going to be a problem, such as a motorbike might be sneaking up on the right or a cyclist on the left, and then away we go. This bus lane catches a lot of people out too. So this bus lane in particular is only valid between 7:30 and 9:30 in the morning. So my pupil is using it because it's 9:35, which means it's not operational at this point. So if you fail to use that lane and you stay in the right-hand lane, you could pick yourself up a serious fault for lane discipline. Up ahead, we've got Nuttall Island. Now, this does seem to bother a lot of people, and I mean, if you go the wrong way on these roundabouts, it's not the end of the world. So I've asked my pupil to go right 5th exit, and this is signposted as the M1. However, when you come round the roundabout, if you get in the wrong position, provided you haven't crossed into someone else's path, then just go where you're pointing. So we're going to go right 5th exit, M1. You see the markings and the signs helping us out there, telling us to be in lane 3. And then we've got traffic lights to control the traffic flow on the junction. So it's still worth checking out for anything coming, because sometimes you'll get vehicles who don't stop at the red lights when they change. Sometimes you'll get blue light vehicles coming through. Always do a cursory check, but be confident that you also have priority. At this point, you can see the signs ahead, particularly the one on the right hand side as we come around the curve. And it's got 3 positions to be in. Now you'll see in position 3 it says M1, so that's where we're going to aim towards. The next set of lights is unfortunately where the pupil gets in the wrong position. Now while she doesn't cross lanes and cause an issue, she's going the wrong way at the point that we come through these lights. So we've got 3 lanes here. These markings tell us that lane 1 leaves the roundabout. So lane 2 moves over as it goes round into lane 1, and then our position can split into lane 2, 3 or 4. Now as we go around here, we should go for lane 2, and that allows you to go towards Stapleford, the A6002, or towards the M1. And what my pupil does, unfortunately, is she leans into the right too far and gets into the lane for the B600. Now, if you do something like this and you can change position safely, by all means do. If you can't change safely, then stick where you are and just go where you're headed. So as you can see the markings here, B600, the pupil does a brilliant job of sticking that lane and just going back towards Watnall, and that's absolutely fine. As long as you're not changing lanes without mirror checks or changing lanes unexpectedly, jumping all over the place, then you're fine. You're keeping your path around this roundabout still really simple, really predictable for everyone else around you. As you're sat at traffic lights like this as well, try and avoid staring at the lights or staring at anything in particular, because you can very quickly zone out, and then when the lights change, you'll miss it. Remember your mirror checks when you pull away. See how the lines guide us off the roundabout here, and then you'll see the arrows on the right telling traffic to merge into your lane. So this is important to use your mirrors at. You want to know who's coming up on the right if anyone's taking a chance to get around you. Particularly with the bollards up ahead, they're going to run out of room very quick. So if someone is going for that overtake, you've got two options. One is to close the gap and one is to ease off and just let them pass. You've got to make a decision as to which one is safest based on the difference in speed. Sometimes it can be safer to close the door on them, other times it's safer to back off. So the examiners are looking for a good decision there. You'll notice the sign here telling us there's a bend ahead. It's pretty obvious anyway. I mean, we can see the road bending away and the traffic coming towards us. It's just giving you a heads up as you come round. The view might be restricted or it might be sharper than it looks. And then we've got the traffic light warning and the cues warning for the lights ahead, and a direction sign here for Kimberley straight ahead and Watnall to the right. I'm going to take my pupil through Kimberley to get us back en route further up. At the lights, notice the lights have just changed green, the learner pulling away there, so we just want to make sure that learner is moving away and we don't catch up with them too quickly. And then a little further up you'll see another warning sign telling you about the road narrowing. This part is particularly tight, so just ease off again, take your speed down a little. My pupil dropped about 20 mile an hour at that point. And then we've got the learner turning right, so again be aware that learner could potentially slow you down by either not making the turn properly, not sitting in the filter box properly, or having to stop to give way. Up ahead, just want to keep on our side of the road unless we need to go around something like parked cars up ahead. Those broken lines you are allowed to drive through if it's safe and necessary. So to get around this car, it's necessary. Mirror checks, make sure it's safe before you enter the lines. And the same with the van, use those mirrors before you move out and use the mirrors before you move in, and just take it nice and easy as you go through. Where you've got to wiggle through like that, just reducing your speed helps out, gives you more control over that steering. You get a nice clear road ahead and a few warning signs just telling you about junction on the right and potentially school children. So again, you just want to keep your eyes moving, watching out for any school children about, particularly if it's school time when they're going in or coming out. And of course the junction, watching out for cars coming out who may not see you properly. This camper van's going to push us out into the middle of the road on the bend, and so is that red Nissan. Just got to watch out as we come around. Again, the pupils reduce the speed just in case, because if there's a parked car the other side, then the oncoming are going to be in the middle of the road too. As we're coming up here, you'll notice the bend and the oncoming cars, they're over the line as they come around. So this is a reason, again, just to ease off that speed a little bit and make sure you've got a safe path before you continue. Particularly if there's a car parked on your side, you might need to hold back and let that oncoming traffic clear before you can go around it. Up ahead, parked cars both sides. Again, we're just looking out for oncoming cars, using the mirrors regularly just to keep an eye on who's behind us too. And there's a warning sign now for the roundabout. Now watch how my learner approaches this. We've got roadworks and we've got temporary lights over them. Now this is one of the examples of just zoning out. She's very, very late to react to those lights, even though they're in plain sight, because she's hooked on the roundabout mentally. So it's quite a late stop. Now, whilst it wasn't enough to give her a serious fault, it's still something that could cause you a problem. If you're making mistakes on your test, you're very likely to distract yourself, very likely to be worrying about those mistakes you've made. You've got to try and leave them behind. So even with this kind of mistake, leave it behind you. Don't dwell on it. Don't think, what's the examiner marked me for? You just got to move on and focus on what's next. If there's roadworks over a roundabout like this, the lights usually override the roundabout because they're going to tell each side when to go. And you can see on the far side of the junction here, the oncoming cars are coming down our side of the road. So the reason the lights override it here is because there's only one lane on the other side, which means we've got nowhere to go if there is oncoming cars and we move across, hence the traffic lights. So we just got to sit and wait. You'll notice as well the barriers across that zebra crossing, which means the pedestrians should not be crossing there, but people may do it still, so you still want to keep an eye out for pedestrians who ignore those barriers, like the chap there who's just ran across the road in front of the other vehicles. So same with the guy with the dogs there, just be mindful of him crossing the road, particularly if he starts to go across the where the zebra crossing is. So anyone approaching a crossing, they should be in your radar. You should be very aware of them. As the lights change, we're going to move off with a mirror check, just making sure nobody's trying to rush around as well, because of course at temporary lights people often get a bit impatient, particularly at red like this when they've been red for a while, and they'll rush to get round. So again, see the woman running across the road, the man with his dogs crossed at the crossing, the barriers telling you that the crossing's not valid, and that's what we've got to watch out for when we're in areas like this especially. As we go ahead, again, there's a zebra crossing. The right side in particular is quite hard to see because of the junction, so just take your time as you approach that. Make extra checks to those points that you can't see very well, and be ready to stop at all on the approach at all times. If you're ready to stop, you're not going to get caught out. If you're rushing towards it and not paying attention towards it, you're probably going to get caught out. Up ahead, we've got a few bends coming up. There's not a lot really going on here. Just got to take our time around them. Make sure you can see before you progress around the bend, because if there is something going on around that bend and you're coming around too fast, you're not going to have the time to react. As we come around this next bend, you'll see there's a few parked cars up ahead, and usually it can get a little bit tight up this way, where there's cars on both sides in particular. So just take your time as you're going around those cars. Make sure you can fit through the gap before you commit to it. If you're not sure, be defensive and slow down, because if you come in too fast, you're going to run out of room very quickly. Notice the lorry coming towards us, how my learner pulls in. Now, I've marked a change direction here. As we pass this last DPD van, you'll notice the car sharply moves into the left. Now with that, I'm not too concerned about the move itself, it's the lack of mirror use that was done. So if you're going to move in around a vehicle, you've got to check those mirrors and make sure that it's safe before you do it. Now, logically there shouldn't be anyone there, but you still want to cover your back. Notice the guy at the crossing, how my pupil eases off just to let him go. Sometimes, of course, people don't use the crossings properly, or they think they're a bit faster than they actually are. So again, just watch out for people not using crossings properly. Up ahead, we've got slow warnings, we've got school warnings. The 20 is an advisory, but of course the lights weren't flashing and it's not school time. So the odds are there's not going to be that many kids around, or any at all. So we don't have to worry about it as much. But still, judge it by the situation. If you think it's quite busy, slow down. Notice the learner just holding back a little bit here just to let the oncoming cars go, because she's got to swing around that Nissan to get down the hill. Again, as you come round, it's just making sure you've got that space to get in. You don't want to rush through and then run out of room quickly. So take your time if you're not sure about the space. Up ahead, we've got a few road signs here. We're going to take the road towards Ilkeston at this junction, which is left, and then towards Matlock at the next, which is right. So we're turning left and then right, first exit and then third exit. Again, as the learner comes in, this is a really nice approach. She takes her time, she pulls the nose of the car in really nicely, and up ahead you can see the markings now, the left lane for left only. So we're going right, third exit. So at this point the pupil has to change lane. If ever you're changing lane, mirrors and signal before you move, and try and do it in good time. Don't leave it till right up to the end before you move. And again, you can see those markings, how the road leads us in. Now, we're going right, of course, third exit, but the pupil here is going to make a mistake. with the directions. While we're doing this, there's no signals, and this is why I've put a signal fault. So we should be signalling right, and as we come around this curve, we should signal left and move into the left lane, ready to leave the roundabout. However, the pupil stays right, realizes her mistake, and she'll just go round again, which is the right thing to do if you end up in that position. Don't try and cut across the lanes, particularly there, because that left lane, as you've seen with the white car, can carry on round to the right and go to IKEA. So as we come round again, there's still no right signal. We're still not signalling. It's still only a driver fault because it doesn't cause too much of an issue to anyone. The roadworks there we don't need to worry about because that's on the slip road ahead. And we're going to keep right. So this is where we were a moment ago. And you can see the signs, the green sign there for Matlock and the green sign on the right-hand lane for Matlock. And as we come around this curve, this time the pupil is going to get in the correct position, the left-hand lane. So as we curve round, everyone on the left should leave the roundabout for Ilkeston, and we can move gently over to that left-hand position, ready to head off towards Matlock. Just like that. Again, sitting at traffic lights, don't zone out. Keep yourself conscious and aware of what's going on around you. So as soon as you get zoned out, you start focusing on anything else, you're going to have an issue. Ancillary controls. So anything that's non-essential is usually classed as an ancillary control. Now, you notice as my pupil accelerates, there's a little bit of a hiccup in the acceleration, and she sort of hovers at 30 mile an hour for a moment and then goes faster. Now that's caused by the speed limiter on my car because she's decided to use that. If you do use your speed limiter, it's going to prevent you from accelerating beyond what you've set it to. So in that case, the car's limited her at 30, so she's had to put her foot down to go through the limiter rather than deactivating it. You could also deactivate it or change the speed just to allow yourself to get up to speed. But if it interferes with your driving, it may be marked, and that's why I've put that there. Going on a dual carriageway like this, of course, staying in the left lane unless we're overtaken or if we need the right lane for anything else. Up ahead, we are going to stick in the left lane because we're going to head to Mansfield, which means coming off at the next junction and then up to the roundabout and up into Eastwood. So pupil's making good progress here, about 60 mile an hour, keeping up with the car ahead. It's not important to get up to 70 if there's a car in front like this. We don't have to overtake them. But of course, if you feel confident to do it and you've got the time to do it, by all means, move out and overtake. Just make sure you come back in again afterwards, because if you're sitting in lane 2 unnecessarily, you will get faulted. I know my voice is probably getting a little bit tiring for you right now, so I'll give you a few moments just to enjoy the scenery and that lovely grey sky we've got over Eastwood. Just up ahead now, you can see the white direction sign on the left. It's going to tell us to use the left lane for Mansfield, which is where we're headed. Now on this particular junction, we don't actually have to do anything to leave. The lane is just going to separate out. Unfortunately, my pupil is going to make a serious fault, followed by a driver fault for speed on approach and signals necessary. There's also another fault which is for your lane discipline here, so I'm going to show you what I'm on about with this one. So we've come off, as you notice the lane's just separated, we're keeping right because the direction sign tells us right the roundabout third exit. And just notice how fast the learner's still coming up. We're still doing 40 mile an hour as we pass that last countdown sign. We should be going a lot slower as we get to the end. We're still close to 25 mile an hour and the pupil has to brake for a car quite heavily. The approach speed there was quite fast. It's very late slowing down. So as a result, we've ended up with the car slightly nipping into the left-hand lane at the end too. So that's going to go as a serious fault. There's also no right signal as we come round, which of course means people don't know where we're going. And at this point, we should also have moved to the left lane, ready to leave the roundabout. So we're leaving from the right-hand lane, which isn't ideal. Now, I'm maybe being a bit picky there, but I'm going to put that down as driver fault for lane discipline, because we should have been in the left lane to leave. Just up ahead, we're going to continue following to Mansfield. The sign on the left here is telling us to use the left lane as we get up to the junction, the eastward loop, gyratory, whatever you want to call it. The lanes don't actually separate until near the end, but whatever lane you pick, you've got to stay in that lane. So Mansfield on the left, as we join into that junction, we are going to stick in that left-hand lane. It's quite a steep hill start here as well, so you just want to be careful of the potential of rolling back when we pull away, particularly in a manual car. So we're in an automatic and there's not really any rollback in this car, which is fantastic. Learner's a little bit slow pulling away, but not to the point I think there's an issue. And as we go around, we're following the signs for Mansfield. As we reach this curve, we want to make sure we're leaning into the curve, looking up at the signs. You'll see the markings on the ground saying Mansfield and the signs saying Mansfield left. This green light gives us a clear path to just go through the junction. There's no traffic can actually join from the right. The pupil hesitates here. Now, I've put that as a driver fault just because it was completely unnecessary, and if there was someone behind, that could have caused an issue. Just up ahead, we're going to be turning right. There's a sign for Collier's Wood on the left, which is quite small. There's also it's an A junction, so what we're going to do here is we want to turn into the first section of road, not the second section. It's not like we have to separate the traffic, one side for in and one side for out. It's two-way on both sides. You can tell from the signs there facing you as you lean in, warning you about the speed ramps. So again, as we come in, just keep into our side of the road. The left side gives way to us there as well, and we just want to be mindful of those speed ramps as we progress down the road. So no rush, no pressure. Pupils much better at a speed over these ones, keeping it below 15 quite often, so much more comfortable. Sometimes a little too slow in my opinion, but there was nothing behind, so it's not causing a disruption, so I'm not going to mark that as a fault. At some points down this road it can get a little bit tight, so we just want to watch out for oncoming traffic, particularly where there's parked cars on our side of the road like this. There's also quite a few potholes at the moment, so the aim with potholes is you don't want to hit them if you can avoid them safely, but equally if you can't avoid them, go through them slowly. Okay, so we've got the pupil giving way to some oncoming cars here before moving out around them into the oncoming lane when it's clear. There's a little bit of a delay there, but I don't think it's enough to warrant a fault for hesitation at this point. So as we continue along, watching out for those speed ramps, taking the time over them, keeping the car nice and comfortable as we do, keeping it under 15. As I said, sometimes a little slower, but not to the point that I think there's enough of an issue to mark a fault. On a side note, while it's quiet up here and there's not a lot to talk about, don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe and share if you're finding this useful. It helps the channel grow and it could help other people getting themselves on the road more confidently, particularly if they're working around Watnall where this test is based. That one was really slow, wasn't it? Again, there's nothing behind us at this point, so I don't see the point marking it as a fault. Again, just try and make reasonable progress over these, so you're not hitting them too hard, but so you're not taking too much time either. Just be mindful of cars on bends like this as well, because we can't see what's coming the other way, and they will be on our side of the road as they come through there. As you can see the car here coming towards us. Pupil did nip a little bit close to the curb here, in my opinion, but again, I don't think that was worth marking a fault just because of the circumstances. I think what she did was perfectly reasonable. She was trying to let the other car through and then they let her through instead. So don't panic if things like that happen. if you plan to give way to someone and they decide to give way to you, just take advantage of that opportunity, get your mirrors covered and get moving if it's safe. And that's all the examiners are after, is safe progress. Up ahead, this section of the road, we have to move on to the oncoming side of the lane of the road, and of course there's quite a few parked cars on our side, so we've got to look right the way down to the end here for anything coming towards before committing, not forgetting a mirror check before moving out onto the wrong side of the road, of course, and keeping an eye on the left side as we go along for bikes, particularly where there's gaps. Someone might try and sneak into it, particularly if they've got a powerful car. Probably not likely, but it's worth covering your back anyway. As we come through the barriers here, there's a height restriction, but most cars can fit. It's 2 meters, so you're looking at vans and lorries that will struggle. So we're okay. We just keep on moving as we go through. Again, lots and lots of mirror use just to see who's following, particularly when we've got a big open space ahead, because that makes us vulnerable to an overtake. Up here, I've got my learner to pull over on the left at a safe place. Again, just anywhere that's safe, not too close to driveways or junctions, and not creating an obstruction in the road. So there's a lovely clear opening there, and that allows everyone to pass by. And when moving on again, just using those mirrors and that blind spot before you actually pull out. If there are cars behind you and you're not sure, wait, let them pass before you go. It's a much better option than trying to rush ahead of somebody if you're not sure about the gap. Up ahead, I'm just going to ask my learner to pull up on the left. You'll notice this road's quite a steep hill, so you will usually get a hill start on your test as well, just to make sure you can pull off safely when you're doing that. Again, blind spots, mirrors, just make sure it's safe before you move off. Don't rush, don't race ahead of people, and make sure you're in full control of that situation. I'm going to get my learner to do her manoeuvre very shortly by turning into Collier's Wood car park. So it's a very small car park on the right. There's not many spaces in it, and of course if it's busy it can get quite tight between the cars, so we just take our time turning in. Whenever you go in a car park, just reduce your speed right down. There's no rush, there's no pressure. If you start rushing through car parks, you just end up giving yourself issues. Now, I've asked my learners to do a forward bay park, and the trick to this is don't think about the lines too much, just drive up to the end of the space. So in this case, where the fence is, line the car up with the fence, and that'll give you the best chance of getting the car in. Once you're in, check your sides to make sure your back wheels are in the line too. You can even crack the door and have a look at the line, make sure you're happy with it. And when you reverse out, of course, check both shoulders regularly and just steer in the back wheels. So you're guiding the back wheels where you want to go. So if the examiner says reverse to the left, you steer left and the car will go to the left. If you want to reverse right, you steer right and the car will go to the right. So you're telling the back wheels what to do, although the front wheels are what actually turns. So my pupil here, we're going to get to reverse to the left and then make our way back out the car park. Because it's a car park, plenty of observations and a nice slow pace. We don't want to rush around here. And then once we make our way out the car park, we take a right turn back onto the main road. As we're coming up to the end here, the view can be a little bit poor because of the trees along the roadside. So again, just be defensive. Make sure you can see before you pull out, because if you rush to get out, you're going to get yourself caught out. You see the learner went to move forward and then spotted the Jeep coming from the right. And away she goes up to the end of the road, where we are going to turn right and head back to where we started. As you do near the end of this road, be mindful that the view from the right is quite poor, so you want to get quite close to the end before you commit. And the cars from the left, they're coming out of a national speed limit road, so they could be coming down a lot quicker than they should be. The speed limit does drop to 30 for them before they reach your junction, but of course some cars don't slow down as much as they should, so just be mindful of that one. Now, of course, as you join the new road, just make sure you keep an eye on who's behind you, little mirror check, and then get yourself rolling. 30 mile an hour speed limit, so you don't want to be travelling more than that. And as you'll see at the bottom left on this, the learner does quite well with that one. Got a few slow markings. That's normally where there's junctions coming up. You can see the warning for the bend on the right there. So of course the road bends off to the right. Again, it's just giving you a heads up of what's going on, so pay attention to those warnings, and if it's something you need to slow down for, don't be shy to slow down. The examiners are going to understand that your speed is being adapted based on those warnings and based on what you can see ahead. A few people get caught on this road because the greenery around it gives it a faster, an impression that it should be faster, whereas it is 30 all the way down. Left bend coming up with a junction on the right, so again watching for cars that might slow to turn right, and that's going to affect your speed as you come around, of course. Blue car there just turning away so we can keep ourselves moving, but you can see the view there is quite poor, so again the learner's just taking the time a little bit before they commit to the turn. Very careful of that little country road there. People often stick the nose out when they're trying to get out. Got a 50 mile an hour limit here, so of course the learner's got to progress up to that 50 if it's safe. Again, just keep your mind up ahead, look further ahead as you travel faster, watch out for any obstructions. Sometimes you get parked cars on the right along this stretch of road where the church is, so of course that pushes vehicles out into the middle of the road. And if that's happening, it might limit your space. You might want to be a little more defensive in that circumstance. Now you notice on the speed on the bottom left, the learner's just hit 50 mile an hour there. Now up ahead, the learner does travel a little bit over 50 for a very brief period. It literally gets to about 53 mile an hour. It's only small, it's only for a short period, so it only goes down as a driver fault. You can see that ping up any moment now. Now up ahead here we've got a mini roundabout. You can see the direction signs on the left there, Nottingham straight ahead, and you can see the roundabout coming up 30 mile an hour just before you get to it. And remember here, priority belongs to cars coming from the right, not cars from the left. So as the learner approaches here, my view is she's too cautious because of the traffic behind. There's nobody signalling to turn, there's nobody slowing down to make the turn. So slowing down to almost a complete stop, just in my opinion, was completely unnecessary based on the traffic behind. Last of all, as we're coming in here to pull up on the left where we started, when you're pulling up, just make sure you get tucked into the curb, because on this occasion the learner was just a little bit far from the curb when she finished. So again, there's going to be another fault logged for that. And that brings us to the end of this mock test. You'll see the total of faults listed on the left there, and hopefully you understand why these faults are recorded. If you have gained from this, if you've learned from this, and it's going to help you prepare for your test, give the video a like and a share, and don't forget to subscribe. Thank you, and God bless.